Hi, welcome to Jay's Tutoring. Today, we are going to learn about ecumenical movements, interfaith dialogue, and the process of reconciliation with Aboriginals, and each of their contributions to the Australian landscape since 1945. Ecumenism. Ecumenism refers to efforts intra-Christians to improve dialogue and reduce divisions among different denominations and churches to forge Christian unity. The NSW Ecumenical Council. Formed in 1982, it followed on the objectives of ecumenism from the ACC, which are to promote unity, encourage evangelism, and facilitate a Christian presence in the Australian landscape since 1945. To attain those ecumenical objectives, it is paramount that a reunification of the doctrinal unity is first established under Christ. Thereafter, the doctrinal unity was achieved through the founding of the Uniting Church in 1977, a combination of three minor Christian denominations. The Uniting Church was founded in the presence of ecumenical unity and strong social justice principles, which are intrinsic core values that the NSW Ecumenical Council upholds. Therefore, the synergy between the two entities became more prevalent and contributed to the Australian landscape since 1945 through an increase in the Uniting Church's adherence by 2.7% in 1986 from 1981. Its synergy then contributes to the Australian landscape through a project called Together for Humanity, which is a charitable campaign that advocates for an inclusive educational organisation that works with schools to foster intercultural understanding. Hence, it reiterates the goal of ecumenism, focusing on visible unity amongst divided Christians in the Australian landscape since 1945. NCCA. David Bill, a staff member who joined the ACC in 1968, commented that without the full participation of Roman Catholic Church and Pentecostal Church of the Christian family, the Australian Council looks increasingly anomalous. This understanding created the driving factor to the founding of ACC's successor, NCCA, in 1994, which later saw the inclusion of Catholics and Pentecostal churches. Hence, having the major denominations join the Council reaffirms the objectives of ecumenism by working together with all Christian denominations to fulfill the proclamation of faith, service, and glory under the one united God. In a holistic sense, the NCCA's strong ecumenical presence has contributed to the Australian landscape since 1945 by establishing further projects that target the foundations of ecumenism. One such example is the Safe as Churches project. It is a running project that tackles the reality of sexual abuse by clergy and clunge workers. Subsequently, through the Access to Aeon, a communications network between the NCCA and the state ecumenical councils, the NCCA was able to create a messianic community in the essence of gospel moral teachings on fraternization, therefore depicting how an ecumenical approach creates dialogue and movement with a mutual understanding for the betterment of the Australian landscape since 1945. Interfaith dialogue. Interfaith dialogue is a process by which adherents of differing religious traditions encounter each other to break down the walls of division that stands in the way of peace and harmony. There are four kinds of interfaith dialogue. Dialogue of life. Sharing emotional preoccupations and problems to live with an open and neighbourly spirit with other faiths. This entails that dialogue of life is crucially important in challenging prejudice, overcoming ignorance, and creating mutual sympathy in an individualistic way. For example, the Golden Rule poster by the Columban Mission Institute highlights a common ideology amongst the 13 most prominent religions and establishes common ground between individuals of different faiths. Therefore, the dialogue of life is instrumental in allowing for the non-elite participation in the interfaith dialogue to accommodate the challenge of the pluralistic Australian landscape. Dialogue of action. Persons of all religions collaborating based on moral values for the betterment of society. This suggests that the dialogue of action is extremely pivotal because it utilizes common social justice teachings to address a situation of injustice. This is exemplified through the Online Hate Prevention Institute's blog in 2015 with Jeremy Jones, the Australian Director for International and Community Affairs, who worked on interfaith dialogue's role in mitigating anti-Semitism through the global forums with different religious faiths. Overall, the dialogue of action has benefited the Australian landscape by upholding social justice principles and seeking better mutual understanding. Dialogue of religious experience. Sharing of each other's religion's unique form of spiritual practices and worship. This proposes that the dialogue of religious experience is exceedingly vital because the mystical experience is common in all religions and provides greater insight into an individual's spirituality. For instance, Sri Ramakrishna, an Indian Hindi mystic and religious leader, says that to dive deep into the ocean of God's presence, the passion of the mystic must cut across all religious bearings and moorings to enrich the personal experience. Hence, the dialogue of religious experience has enriched the Australian landscape by enlightening adherents of the myriad of interreligious ways they can encounter God's love and grace. Dialogue of theological exchange. Specialists who learn to appreciate and deepen their understanding of each other's spiritual values and religious heritage. This entails that dialogue of theological exchange is crucial because it provides an opportunity for theologists to examine difficult issues with respect and understanding. For example, the Religions for Peace Australia in 2012 saw the 5 most prominent religions in the world discuss topics of gay marriage, celibacy, and life after death. Therefore, the dialogue of theological exchange complements the Australian landscape through a demonstration of a theologian's internal diversity of the understanding of peace and harmony. Reconciliation. Reconciliation means oneness of people in heart, mind, and spirit. Unity brings everyone together to be able to succeed. The reconciliation process is explored through 2 key religions, Christianity and Aboriginals. Reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and Christians has significantly contributed to the raised awareness of unity in the Australian landscape since 1945. In the New Testament, Paul says in the church, Christ is all and is in all, so there is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised. Paul's message of equity and justice extends to Indigenous people to remedy past actions such as land dispossessions and racism. Thereby, Christians' recognition that Aboriginals' histories and culture are part of shared national identity, which has contributed to national unity. For instance, Walk Alongside, an initiative organised by Reconciliation Australia, creates incentives for Australian churches to be culturally inclusive communities of faith that can build respectful relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to encourage national equity. Consequently, Christians' process of reconciliation with Aboriginals has contributed towards creating an equally shared national identity with the Australian landscape since 1945. Judaism and Aboriginals. Reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and Jews has significantly contributed to the increased understanding of past sins in Australia's landscape since 1945. According to Jewish tradition, the final process to achieving teshuvah, meaning the radicalized change in direction and focus of life, is attained by Kabbalah al-Hatid, meaning to live in a new way by choosing to refrain from sinful action in the future. The Teshuvah extends to Indigenous people by providing healing for Aboriginals from past transgressions. For example, this is notable through Rowan Caston, a Jewish Queen's Counsel who represented Adi Mabo in the Mabo case. The case then led to the acknowledgement of the unique connection of the land through the passing of the Native Title Act in 1993. Therefore, reconciliation was crucial to recognize past wrongs and has contributed towards the Indigenous people's healing through recognition of their intrinsic connection with the Australian landscape since 1945.